Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Martello. We're going to do some 9.5 monitoring progress questions today, just so you can see how I show my work on these questions. Section 9.5 is about using the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. So I'm here in the textbook in section 9.5. This is an actual textbook, but you can go to the online textbook and follow along. The first kinds of questions are following example 1. If you'd like to take a quick second to look over the example, that would be a good idea. I'm going to go down here and we're going to look at these monitoring progress questions. So the first thing that I want to state here is that we want to make sure our first step is to start with our equation in standard form, and it has to be equal to 0. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, once we have our equation in the right form, then we're going to identify the a, the b, and the c from the equation that we have, and we're going to plug it into our quadratic formula. Here's the quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When we say all over, that means that everything here gets divided by the product of 2a. Okay, we're going to look at monitoring progress 1, and I'm getting this from the textbook right here. We're going to solve the equation using the quadratic formula and round the solution to the nearest tenth if necessary. So I wrote our equation down, x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. I notice it's in standard form and it's equal to 0. So that's a good start. Let's identify our a, b, and c. So technically there's a 1 in front of this x squared. That's going to be our a. Our b is -6 and our c is 5. Let's take these numbers and let's plug it into the quadratic formula. So we're going to have x equals, and I'm going to set up my big fraction here. We want the opposite of b. We said our b was -6, so the opposite is going to be +6 plus or minus the square root. Now we want b squared. So again, our b is -6. That gets squared. Notice how I put the negative number in parentheses because a negative number squared is going to become positive. So just be careful with that. Minus 4 times our a, which is 1, and times our c, which is 5. And this is all over 2 times our a, which is 1. Okay, let's simplify. So I'm going to keep the 6 plus or minus, and I'm going to keep the square root, but I'm going to simplify underneath this square root here. So -6 squared is 36. And then let's multiply here. This technically is a -4 times 1 times 5. That gives us -20. So this is -20 over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, our next step is let's subtract underneath here. So we get 6 plus or minus the square root of 16 over 2. So I just subtracted 36 minus 20 is 16. Now from here, my next step is I'm going to take the square root of 16. Now we know that the square root of 16 is 4, and this plus or minus symbol here is kind of making sure that we remember that it's not just 4, it's +4 and -4. So I'm going to go down here, x equals 6 plus or minus 4 over 2. Now here we need to make sure that we remember this is 2 separate answers. So this is really 6 plus 4 over 2 and then 6 minus 4 over 2. So you can kind of set it up however you like. I kind of like to draw it and kind of signify that there are 2 separate answers. So I'm going to go like this and show my 2 separate answers. I'm going to have 6 plus 4 over 2 as my one answer, and then 6 minus 4 over 2 as my second answer. Okay, let's simplify. Add the numerator first, 10 over 2. Let's divide it, and I get 5. That's my first answer. Our second one, 6 minus 4 is 2 over 2. When I divide it, I get 1, and that's my second answer. So my 2 answers are 5 and 1. If I wanted to, I could check this very easily. I take both of these numbers, plug them back in for the x's, and it should make our equation work. Okay, that's monitoring progress 1. Let's do another example. I'm going to do monitoring progress number 2. So again, I'm just getting this from the book here. Okay, let's write down our equation. 1/2 x squared plus x minus 10 equals 0. Okay, again, let's first notice that this equation is in standard form and it's equal to 0, which is a great start. Let's identify our A is 1/2, our B is 1, and our C is -10. We're gonna plug this into the quadratic formula. Here we go. We get x equals the opposite of B, so B is 1, the opposite is gonna be -1, plus or minus the square root of B squared, so 1 squared, minus 4 times our A is 1/2, times our C is -10, and this is all over 2 times our A, which is 1/2. Okay, let's simplify underneath the square root symbol. We're gonna keep the 1 plus or minus the square root. We get 1 squared is 1. Now be careful here. This is a -4 times 1/2 times -10. So the negative and negative are gonna give us a positive, so it's gonna become plus. Let's multiply them together. So this would be -2 times -10 is +20, so plus 20. All over 2 times 1/2 is 1. Okay, let's simplify underneath the square root. We have -1 plus or minus the square root of 21. And then I don't even really need to write over 1. I can just kind of get rid of that over 1 because anything divided by 1 is itself. All right, our next step is now we're going to take the square root of 21, but we know that 21 is not a perfect square, and that's okay. Remember in the directions it says to round to the nearest hundredth. Actually in the book here it says to the nearest tenth, so that's what I'm going to do. Let's round to the nearest tenth. And I'm going to put in the square root of 21. And if I round to the nearest tenth, that would be 4.6. But don't forget, it's not just 4.6. It's positive and negative 4.6. So let me go over here. We're gonna write down x equals -1 plus or minus 4.6. Okay, let's separate this into our two possible answers. So this is gonna be -1 plus 4.6. and -1 minus 4.6. So that's what this plus or minus symbol is here. We're gonna add it and we're gonna subtract it. Okay, let's get our two answers. This is gonna be 3.6, and then our second answer is -5.6. And those are our two answers to this equation. Again, if I wanted to check my work, I could take both of these numbers and plug them back into the original equation up here. Just remember that these are rounded answers, so if you plug them back in, you're not gonna get exactly 0, but it should be approximately 0. Okay, we're gonna do some more. I'm gonna turn my paper over and we're gonna look at monitoring progress number 4. So again, I'm getting this from the book. Here's number 4. This is 4x squared minus 4x equals -1. Okay, if we notice here in this equation, the first thing that I notice here is that it's not equal to 0. I must have the equation equal to 0 before I do anything else. So let's fix it. Let's add this 1 to both sides, and then we can get our equation equal to 0. 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. All right, now it's in standard form and it's equal to 0. Here's my A, B, and C. Let's plug it into the quadratic formula. So we're gonna have x equals the opposite of B, so +4, because our B is -4, the opposite is +4, plus or minus the square root of B squared, so -4 squared, minus 4 times our A, which is 4, times our C, which is 1, and this is all over 2 times our A, which is 4. Okay, let's simplify. 4 plus or minus the square root. Underneath the radical, -4 squared is +16, and then -4 times 1, that's -16. All over 2 times 4, which is 8. Okay, we're gonna simplify under the radical. We get 4 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 8. Now we should notice that something different is happening here because the number underneath our square root is 0. The square root of 0 is just 0. There's no such thing as positive and -0. So when I go to simplify this, there's really only gonna be one answer. So let's go ahead down here and let's write. We're gonna have 4 plus or minus the square root of 0 is 0 over 8. Now, if I wanted to, I could split this into the two, but 4 plus 0 and 4 minus 0, both of them are going to equal 4. So again, there's only one answer for this question. Let's reduce it. 4 over 8 reduces to 1 over 2. And this one only has one solution. Again, it's one solution because the number underneath the square root symbol here was 0. The other two examples that we were doing before, the number under here was positive, so there were two solutions. Think about what if the number under here was negative? Remember, you're not allowed to take the square root of a negative number, so if that were the case, we would have had no solution. Okay.